Okay, so my name is Jeff Ferzoco. It was a longer intro than I thought I wrote down, but there it is. I'm here to talk about Data Through Design, which is a great exhibition that we did in New York City in March. And the full team is shown here, and I'm going to give you a little background and show you some of the work, why we did it, and what we kind of learned from it a little bit. So Data Through Design is a 3D alternative cartography exhibit that we held during New York City's Open Data Week. Open Data Week is something that the mayor's office holds every year in order to celebrate our open data platform. And we're pretty proud of it in New York City. It's really robust, and it adds to a lot of the activity that happens in the city, specifically with our data visualization, and businesses are using it, and a lot of mapping comes from the wonderful data sets we have on our data portal and around the city. And so we like to have a week where we kind of dive deep and let everybody get to know what we have going on. So I teach at Pratt and I work at CARTO, and the two organizations were both going to be doing something with data this week. One of us was going to have an exhibit, and so we thought we would merge our efforts, and so we thought we would create an opportunity for people to design in 3D mapping projects and show them off to everybody that they could. So we wanted to learn a little bit about how people thought about mapping in a 3D space. We wanted to understand how narrative changed when you took it from a flat page into a 3D space. And then we also wanted to know more about how people saw New York and what they wanted to do with open data that was interesting and added a little depth to how we see the city through our open data platform. So the biggest reason we did it is because we were tired of doing digital and print mapping. So we thought we would go into the 3D space, and we know that there's a lot of good work that can happen out there. I went to CCA, like was mentioned, and I sat next to the woodworking and architecture departments, and we were always taking our design work and extruding it into 3D and doing work with wood. And so it was pretty inspiring, and we had a good base of knowledge on how to get this done. And we really, as it says here, there were just a lot of ways to tell a story, and we wanted to do it beyond the flat plane that we're normally working with. So, and this actually is one of the best pieces that was in there. It's a map of all the trees in New York City. It's basically a choropleth with stacks. The height of the wood is the number of trees in that space. So how did we do it? Super last minute. We came up with this idea about 2 months before the Open Data Week started. We did a 2-week public call for submission concepts, which was really, really short. And because it's New York City and we have 8 million people, we got a lot of submissions. We had 52 actually. Artists had a month to analyze the data and build the work. And that might sound like a lot of time, but when you're doing things like this, it's not really a lot of time because you have a lot of crafting and you have a lot of woodworking to do and thinking about electronics in a lot of the cases. So we were pretty impressed with what we got. We had no budget for space. CARTO has a very large space, but we wanted to find something a little bit more central to the middle of the city. So we managed to talk some people into giving us a space, and they were really happy to do that. We leveraged all of our networks and just kind of pulled everybody in that we could to spread the word and get things done. And we totally did it just in between our other work. And so we pulled it off, but it was kind of tight. So the call was open for 2 weeks. We got 52 great submissions, and not all were map related. We kind of had a bit of a requirement that it was somewhat spatial. And we got that. Everybody was somewhat spatial, but not always were mapping directly. And so we got into a room and had some lively discussions about all of the submissions and what we thought of them all. So we assessed them based on the proposed question and the data to be used, the output medium and the visual aesthetic, and if we thought they could get it done, because there were a lot of people that were trying to boil the ocean, and that is really, really hard to do. So we really wanted to make sure that they were going to show up, basically, is what it was. So we gauged on that too. So the work was the submissions we got were super dark. So we didn't really expect that, and so people pulled things out of like the RAT database, the RAT data set in the New York City data portal is like the #1 looked at data set. And so we knew that that was probably going to happen, but we didn't understand the depth to which people were going to go. It's like, how do we die in New York City? How do you measure hell? You know, things like that. And it was really, and so we sat around this table and we're like, oh my God, we really need to get existential here and figure things out. So we picked a lot of these, and some of them ended up in the exhibition. And then there were also other ones like the tree one that I showed you earlier, just looking at sort of life in New York City. So we had a nice balance in the end, but the meeting in picking these was actually one of the best meetings I've ever had. So here's some of the work. We've got a lot of great visualizations of New York City itself. You can see a lot of the shape of the boroughs. And we had some really terrific creative ideas that seemed to take a lot of time to think of, and we didn't expect some of them to come together, but they did. And then we had the opening, and it just happened to be the day of Winter Storm Riley. Do you guys remember Winter Storm Riley? Anybody from the East Coast go through that? It was really an intense storm, and it was called the Bomb Cyclone. I don't know if you remember that day. So we decided to have the event anyway. We were really considering canceling it right before, but everyone showed up. So, and we had 200 people show up in the middle of a nor'easter that was sort of life-threatening in the middle of Dumbo, down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. And it was a great night. We had a really, really nice time, and got a lot of good feedback, and everyone got there safe and got home safe, and we were very happy. One thing this shows that I really love, and I run Geo NYC, which is a very large geo meetup. People show up for geo events and mapping events in New York City like you would not believe. So it proved the durability of our community and how much people really engage deeply with space and spatial thinking. So what did we learn about cartography? That people really like the form of maps a lot, but right beyond that, if it doesn't go far enough and it doesn't show the data, it doesn't show what is actually going on behind it, they question things, and this is New Yorkers especially. New Yorkers question everything. And so we saw a lot of really critical thought about all of these pieces, and the conversations you heard around them were, does it go deep enough? Does it really touch the topic in a way that it should? What's the data set? Can we see the schema? It was it was like a lot of really cool, great stuff. So people like to touch things. You can see people touching things in all of these pictures here. It doesn't always have to be a map, so there was a lot of visualization. The strings on the left-hand side are representative of a timeline. I cannot remember exactly what it was representing, but you can see it's a data visualization, and the length of the string represents a value. And we can educate people with art, and shapefiles don't import into wood very well, so you have to do other things with them. So looking at how we kind of relate to this work, I know everybody on the team started thinking a little bit differently about how we did mapping. So, once you go through this and you look at people doing these amazing things with 3D and you kind of help them figure it out, you go back to a screen and you're like, wow, there's some limitations here. I can't actually extrude anything. So I learned a lot about storytelling, and about not only in the storytelling of the individual pieces, but when we coordinated them together. We really thought a lot about how they related to each other and what the experience of that people would have in coming up to them. And Wenfei was fantastic. She built these massive cases that she built them in Boston, drove them to New York, and then drove them back. It was like 6 hours, 10 hours of work that was insane. But we really made sure they were presented well, and were represented to honor the work that these people had done. And then I teach the first class in the SAVI program, and we talk about 3D now a little bit more. So it's kind of infused into all of our work. What we learned about cartography exhibits, they're a lot of work. If you're going to do this, and I hope you do, make your requirements detailed and specific. Make sure that everybody knows exactly what they want, what they should do. A theme is a really useful thing because it keeps people within a range, and you don't have people going way outside and doing things, which is not always bad, but sometimes you just want to keep people kind of contained within a theme. We probably should have spent more time reviewing the proposals, but we're all very busy, and this was sort of a side project. But just kind of make sure that you review the proposals really deeply and are very specific about it. And dive into what they can actually do and make sure that there's a little bit of history that they've done woodworking and planing before, because they can run into problems, and we absolutely help them out, but we were kind of compromising other things in order to do that. And definitely find a way to control the weather, because that was the key. We don't have a theme this year yet, but we're going to do it again. There are going to be probably a lot more functions around it, so we'll do panels and parties and things, but we're, again, trying to find space to do it and just make it really right. You can visit Data Through Design right now to learn about each piece in the 2018 show, and then we'll be announcing the next one pretty soon. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. That was very cool. Any questions for Jeff?
Thanks, that was great. The critical thought that you said people brought to the exhibit, do you think that it was because it was framed as sort of like this open source thing, whereas people would have been more like accepting if it was a more traditional exhibit?
Thanks. So I think one of the things about open data that I really like is it kind of puts something in front of them and makes them think about why that exists a little bit. And so let's take the rat data set, right? So, I think it makes you think about why rats are in New York City. Where are all the rats? Are they near my house? Things like that. So I think I think seeing a data set that you didn't expect kind of really helps you dig a little deeper into what is going on in the city. And I think what happened with these exhibits, and I hope I'm answering your question with this, is that we kind of forced them to look at open data sets and really dig deeper. And maybe that's why we got such dark stuff, because it was like March. and I think it makes people think about the state of the city and all the activity going around them, and realizing that 8 million people are generating all this data, and that you're looking at a portfolio of just the output of that activity. And I think it makes them kind of look a little bit deeper about what's going on. So I think and I think the open data portal is really inspiring. I watch people open it up and start using data sets all the time, and the thought processes you see from the generated data is just really, really great. It makes you remember that we're all human a little bit.
Thanks, this is great. 2 questions. How do you measure hell? And are there any new data sets for 2019, or any updated ones for from 2018?
So measuring hell, there's, I would start with religious institutions probably, and see like the open data set of where they all are in the city, and then I would go a little bit deeper. I hope it doesn't involve the rat data set, but it could. What was your second question? Oh yeah. They just so New York City has, and I'm going to lack specifics here, but I'm going to go into it. 2018 was a pivotal year for open data, and there were requirements that certain agencies that hadn't released data, they were mandated to release a whole bunch of data. So we got just basically like 150 new data sets or something like that. So, and my class just started in the end of August, and we introduced those data sets, and so we had people picking them up and using them. They're amazing. So, and every year we're coming out with more and more. And I believe New York City has like a plan to, every year you have requirements for new data sets that will be coming out. So it's constantly expanding, and it's kind of like a little gift every year that it comes out. So yes.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the community that an event like this would bring together? I imagine bringing maps into a 3-dimensional space brings in artists and other folks who might not always be in the mapping world.
So that's a 2-part thing. One, so GeoNYC I know very, very well, and that's basically all the spatial thinkers in New York City that choose to go to a meetup, which is about 3,000 people. And it's a really and Stephanie could probably tell you a little bit, it's a really great group, and they're dedicated. So we have a solid mapping community that really understands why we map, understands how to map New York and what all the dynamics of it are. They will show up on a dime. We can announce 2 days before and get 120 people in a room in the middle of Brooklyn, which is weird. The types of people surprise me a lot. It's, so for something like this, you need 3D skills, right, to do something like this. And I think that we got a really nice range of people who had never touched 3D before and people who were like master woodworkers. And so having that range and saying, go to the New York City Open Data Portal, find something and make something, you get this really great diverse range of people that just wanted to participate in something like this. We got Juan from Columbia, who works for the Spatial Information Design Lab, who did this beautiful structure that he was kind of struggling with in the end, and he kind of boiled the ocean a little bit, but you just watched him and you're like, this is totally what you should be doing. And then the wooden Manhattan piece was done so expertly, and then there were a couple of them that were just really nice efforts by people who just wanted to try 3D for the first time. And so it was kind of inspiring watching people work really hard, almost fail, and then we bailed them out and helped them out a little bit, and it just kind of helped everybody move forward really nicely. So it was really diverse and really thoughtful, and I can't wait to see what happens this year.
I think this maybe have to be the last one.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could tell why Central Park was excluded from the trees Manhattan map? I was just curious.
I don't know the answer, but I'm going to make one up. It's that there are a lot of trees and there were too many to count. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Actually, I don't know why that is. Let me go back there and see that, because I'd forgotten that. Yeah, it's definitely not there. But right next to it, the Upper West Side has a ton of trees, doesn't it? I'm not really sure. I could find that answer out for you and get you back to you. Yeah, that's it. That's right. And right, the Parks Department is not responsible for the trees in Central Park. Yeah, so that's why. And so the data came from, thank you, the data came from the Million Trees Initiative, and that was a tree census that came out in 2017 or 2016, and comes out every 5 years. And this was the latest version, and Central Park would be under a different authority. That's what it was. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Jeff. I just want to say that there is a tool to convert shapefiles to